need you to marry me. Tonight." Those 6 words, spoken by a woman he barely knew, would change everything. Ethan Cole thought he was attending a simple birthday party. Instead, he walked into a corporate war, one where the weapon wasn't money or power, but a marriage certificate. In 48 hours, Clara West would lose everything she'd built, unless a single father with nothing to gain became the husband she needed to survive. This is a story about desperate choices, hidden agendas, and 2 people who discovered that sometimes the biggest risks lead to the most unexpected rewards. If you're hooked, stay until the end, and don't forget to hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The house smelled like expensive wine and regret. Ethan Cole stood in the doorway of Richard Palmer's sprawling estate, holding a manila folder like a shield. Inside were quarterly projections he could have emailed, should have emailed, but Palmer had specifically requested the physical copy be delivered tonight. "No exceptions, Cole. I want those numbers in my hand before midnight." So here he was, a single father who'd left his 11-year-old daughter with the neighbor, wearing his only decent blazer and wondering how quickly he could escape. The party spilled across the back lawn in waves of laughter and clinking glasses. String lights turned the garden into something from a magazine, the kind of scene Ethan used to imagine back when he still believed in elegant gatherings and effortless sophistication. Before diapers and deadlines taught him that real life was messier, louder, and happened in houses that smelled like mac and cheese instead of catered hors d'oeuvres. He moved through the crowd like a ghost, nodding at colleagues who barely registered his presence. Marketing, finance, operations. People who belonged at parties like this, who knew how to laugh at jokes that weren't funny and compliment ties they didn't notice. Ethan found Palmer near the bar, red-faced and jovial, surrounded by executives toasting his 55th birthday. "Cole!" Palmer boomed, spotting him. "You actually came. Thought you'd chicken out." "Just dropping off the report, sir." Ethan extended the folder. Palmer waved it away without looking. "Put it on the table inside. Have a drink first. You look like you need one." "I really should get back." "1 drink, Cole." "That's an order." Palmer grinned, but there was steel underneath, the kind of command that wasn't really a request. Ethan accepted a glass of something amber and expensive, taking a small sip that burned all the way down. Around him, conversations swirled about stock prices and vacation homes and someone's new yacht. He checked his watch. 8:45. If he left now, he could still make it home before Lily's bedtime. He was calculating his exit strategy when he felt it, that prickle of awareness that comes when someone's watching you. Ethan turned. Across the lawn, standing beneath an oak tree wrapped in fairy lights, was Clara West. He'd seen her before, of course. Everyone at Palmer Industries knew the CEO. She appeared in company-wide emails, strategic presentations, the occasional hallway encounter that left junior employees stammering. But Ethan had never been close enough to notice the details. The way she held her wine glass like it was evidence in a trial. The sharp intelligence in her eyes that seemed to catalog everything and everyone. She was looking directly at him. Not past him, not through him, at him. And she wasn't smiling. Ethan glanced behind himself, certain she must be focused on someone else. But when he looked back, Claire was already moving toward him, cutting through the crowd with the kind of purpose that made people step aside without realizing they were doing it. His heart kicked against his ribs. Had he done something wrong, missed a deadline, filed the wrong paperwork? She stopped 3 feet away, close enough that he could smell her perfume, something subtle and expensive that made the garden air feel cheaper by comparison. "Ethan Cole," she said. Not a question, a statement. "Ms. West." His voice came out steadier than he felt. "I didn't realize you'd be here." "Richard's birthday party?" One dark eyebrow lifted. "I'd be a terrible CEO if I missed it." She studied him for a moment, her gaze moving from his face to his worn blazer to the death grip he had on his wine glass. "You look uncomfortable." "I'm not much for parties." "Neither am I." She took a sip of her own drink, never breaking eye contact. "But we do what we must, don't we, Mr. Cole?" There was something odd in the way she said it. Something weighted. "I suppose so," Ethan said carefully. Silence stretched between them. Around them, the party continued. Laughter, music, the clink of silverware on china as servers circulated with trays. But in the small space Clara West occupied, everything felt muted, waiting. "Walk with me," she said suddenly. It wasn't a request. Ethan followed her away from the main gathering toward the darker edges of the property where the string lights grew sparse and the manicured lawn gave way to wild grass. His mind spun through possibilities. Was he being fired? Promoted? Had he accidentally offended her somehow? They stopped near a stone bench overlooking a small pond. The party noise faded to a distant murmur. Clara turned to face him fully. In the dim light, her expression was unreadable. "I need to ask you something," she said, "and I need you to listen to the entire question before you respond." Ethan's throat tightened. "All right." She took a breath. Let it out slowly. Then, with the same calm precision she might use to discuss quarterly earnings, Clara West said, "I need you to marry me. Tonight." The world tilted. For a moment, Ethan was certain he'd misheard, that the wine had been stronger than he thought, or exhaustion had finally caught up with him, or this was some elaborate joke he didn't understand. But Clara's face remained serious, steady, waiting. Ethan's voice cracked. He cleared his throat and tried again. "I'm sorry. What?" "I need a husband," Clara said, as calmly as if she were ordering coffee. "Legally married, documented, and filed, and I need it done within the next 48 hours. Ethan laughed. He couldn't help it. The sound came out sharp and disbelieving. "This is a joke. Palmer put you up to this, didn't he? Some kind of birthday prank?" "This isn't a joke." Something in her tone made Ethan's laughter die. He looked at her, really looked, and saw no humor, no performance, just a woman standing very still, holding herself together with what looked like considerable effort. "Why?" The question came out hoarse. Clara's jaw tightened. "Because in 48 hours, if I'm not married, I lose everything." She reached into her clutch and pulled out a phone, scrolling to a document that glowed blue-white in the darkness. She handed it to Ethan. He stared at the screen. Legal language filled the page, dense paragraphs of clauses and subclauses that his tired brain struggled to parse. But certain phrases jumped out. Upon the death of the trustee, unmarried status renders control null, transfer of majority shares. "My grandfather founded Palmer Industries 40 years ago," Clara said quietly. "When he died, he left controlling shares in trust. The terms seemed reasonable at the time. I'd inherit full control when I turned 35, provided I met certain conditions. I met them all, except one." "You have to be married," Ethan said slowly, "by my 36th birthday, which is Sunday." Clara's voice remained level, but Ethan heard the tremor underneath. 2 days from now." "That's..." Ethan struggled to process it. "That's insane. Why would he..." "Because my grandfather was a brilliant businessman and a deeply traditional man who believed women needed husbands to be taken seriously." Bitterness crept into Clara's tone. "He thought I'd marry young, have children, let my husband handle the real business while I played at being important. Instead, I built Palmer Industries into what it is today, tripled revenue, expanded into 6 new markets, but none of that matters if I'm not married by Sunday." Ethan handed back the phone, his mind reeling. What happens if you're not? The shares transfer to the board's appointed trustee, who will immediately sell to the highest bidder. Clara's hands clenched, and I know exactly who that bidder is. Victor Hale. The name meant nothing to Ethan. Clara must have seen his confusion because she continued. "Hale owns Meridian Capital. He's been circling Palmer Industries for 2 years, waiting for an opening. If he gets control, he'll strip the company for parts, sell off divisions, fire half the workforce. Everything my grandfather built, everything I've protected, gone." She looked out at the dark pond, her profile sharp against the distant lights. "I've tried everything else," she said softly. "Legal challenges, alternative arrangements. I spent 6 months with lawyers trying to break the trust. It's airtight, and now I'm out of time." Ethan's heart was hammering. This was real. She was actually serious. "Why me?" Clara turned back to him. "Because you're perfect." "I'm... what?" "Perfect for this. Clara's tone shifted into something more businesslike, as if she'd practiced this pitch. You're quiet, reliable, no scandals, no complicated personal life. You work in operations, not executive level, so people won't question why we haven't been seen together publicly. And, she hesitated, you're a single father. That detail makes the story more believable. Ethan felt something cold settle in his chest. You've been researching me. I've been researching everyone. Clara didn't sound apologetic. I needed to find someone I could trust, someone who wouldn't try to use this situation against me later. Your record is clean, Mr. Cole. You show up on time, you do your work, you raise your daughter alone and never complain. People respect you. People barely know I exist, Ethan said flatly. Exactly. Which makes you trustworthy. Clara stepped closer. I'm not asking you to love me. I'm not asking for anything real, just a legal marriage. A few months of appearing together in public. Then, once the trust terms are satisfied and the company is secure, we divorce quietly. You walk away with compensation that will change your life. Compensation. $5 million. Ethan's breath caught. The number hung in the air between them, impossible and enormous. 5 million. Enough to pay off his mortgage, fund Lily's college, give them security for the first time in years, enough to make this insanity almost tempting. You're serious, he said. Completely. You want me to marry you for money? I want you to marry me to save 1,200 jobs. Clara's voice sharpened. If Hale takes over, he'll gut this company. Everyone you work with, the people you see every day, the ones with families and mortgages and lives depending on their paychecks, they'll be gone. I'm trying to prevent that. And yes, I'm willing to pay you very well to help me. Ethan ran a hand through his hair, his thoughts fragmenting. This was crazy, completely, utterly insane. He barely knew this woman, and yet, why tonight? He asked. Why not last week, last month? Pain flickered across Clara's face. Because I thought I had another option, someone I trusted, but he... She stopped, swallowed. He declined. Very publicly, which means if I try to approach anyone else in my usual circles, word will get back to the board. They're already watching for any sign of desperation. I need someone outside that world, someone who won't trigger questions. Someone desperate enough to say yes, Ethan said quietly. Clara didn't deny it. I'm not pretending this is ideal, but I'm out of options and out of time. So yes, Mr. Cole, I'm asking a man I barely know to marry me because I have nowhere else to turn. Her composure cracked slightly. And I'm hoping that you're the kind of person who sees past the strangeness of this request to what's actually at stake. Ethan looked at her, really looked, and saw exhaustion beneath the polish, desperation beneath the control. This woman who commanded boardrooms and negotiated million-dollar deals was standing in a dark garden asking a stranger to save her. I have a daughter, Ethan said. I know. If I do this, she can't be part of the performance. No photos, no interviews. She stays out of it. Clara nodded immediately. Agreed. And I need to think about it. Something close to panic crossed Clara's face. How long? Give me until morning. Mr. Cole, I'm not making this decision in a dark garden after one glass of whiskey, Ethan said firmly. If you want me to upend my life, I need time to think, to consider what this means for my daughter, for me. You can't ask me to be reasonable and then expect an answer in 5 minutes. Clara stared at him. Then, slowly, she nodded. Morning, I'll call you at 7. Make it 8. I need to get Lily to school first. 8 o'clock. Clara pulled out her phone. What's your number? Ethan recited it. A moment later, his own phone buzzed with a text. This is Clara West. Call me when you decide. The CEO tucked her phone away and extended her hand. Thank you for listening. Ethan shook it. Her grip was firm, her palm cool. I haven't said yes, he reminded her, but you haven't said no. Clara held his gaze. That's more than I had 10 minutes ago. She turned and walked back toward the party, her shoulders straight and her pace measured. But Ethan saw the tension in her spine, the careful control of someone who couldn't afford to fall apart. He stood alone by the pond, his heart racing and his thoughts spinning in circles that led nowhere good. Marry Clara West. Become her husband in name, if not in truth. Accept $5 million to live a lie. It was the kind of offer that only came to people in movies, the kind of situation that couldn't possibly be real. Except it was. And somewhere in the space between now and 8 a.m. tomorrow, Ethan had to decide if he was brave enough or foolish enough to say yes. Ethan drove home in a fog. The roads were familiar, the same turns he took every day, the same stoplights that seemed to know exactly when he was running late. But tonight, everything felt surreal, disconnected, like he was watching himself from outside his own body. I need you to marry me. The words kept echoing. He pulled into his driveway at 9:47 p.m. The house was a small two-story colonial that he'd bought 7 years ago, back when the future seemed more certain and mortgages felt manageable. Now it was just home, slightly shabby, perpetually in need of repairs he couldn't afford, but filled with the kind of warmth that couldn't be bought. The living room light was on. Through the window, Ethan could see Mrs. Yates on the couch, reading a magazine. He took a breath, tried to settle his racing thoughts. Then he went inside. "Mr. Cole!" Mrs. Yates looked up with a smile. "You're back earlier than I expected." Party was shorter than planned. Ethan managed what he hoped was a normal expression. "How was Lily?" "Perfect as always. Homework's done, teeth brushed, in bed by 8:30. She stood, gathering her things. "That child is an angel." "I'm biased, but I agree." Ethan pulled out his wallet. "What do I owe you?" "Oh, don't be silly. It was 2 hours." But she accepted the bills he handed over with a gracious nod. "She asked if you'd come say goodnight when you got home." Guilt twisted in Ethan's chest. "I will. Thank you, Mrs. Yates." After she left, Ethan climbed the stairs to Lily's room. The door was cracked open, a nightlight casting soft shadows across walls covered in drawings, horses, rainbows, elaborate castles populated by stick-figure princesses. Lily was curled under her comforter, dark hair spread across the pillow. Her eyes were closed, but they opened when Ethan sat on the edge of her bed. "Hey, sweetheart," he whispered. "Sorry I'm late." "It's okay." Lily's voice was thick with sleep. "Did you have fun at the party?" "It was interesting." "Did they have cake?" "Probably. I didn't stay long enough to find out." Lily yawned, her small hand finding his. "You should have brought me some." "Next time." Ethan squeezed her fingers gently. "Go back to sleep." "Dad?" "Yeah? Are you okay? You sound weird." Ethan's throat tightened. Even half asleep, his daughter could read him like a book. "I'm fine, Lil. Just tired." She studied him with eyes that were too perceptive for 11 years old. Then she seemed to accept his answer, settling back into the pillow. "Love you." "Love you too." Ethan kissed her forehead. "Sweet dreams." He stayed until her breathing evened out, watching the gentle rise and fall of her chest. This was his world. This small person who trusted him completely, who depended on him to make good choices, to keep her safe, to be the steady presence she needed. And now he was considering marrying a stranger for money. Ethan went downstairs and poured himself a glass of water he didn't drink. He paced the kitchen, sat at the table, stood again. $5 million. The number kept circling back. It was more money than Ethan would earn in 20 years. More money than his parents had seen in their entire lives, enough to transform everything. But it meant lying, performing, becoming someone he wasn't. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "I know this is overwhelming. Whatever you decide, I understand." C.W. Ethan stared at the message. Clara West sending texts at 10 p.m. like she wasn't the CEO of a multi-million-dollar company, like she was just another person, desperate and afraid. He thought about her standing by the pond, the carefully controlled fear in her voice, the way she'd outlined her proposal like a business deal because that was probably the only way she knew how to ask for help. Another text. "For what it's worth, I wouldn't ask if I had any other choice." Ethan's fingers hovered over the keyboard. A dozen responses formed and dissolved. Finally, he typed, "I'll call you at 8. The response came immediately. "Thank you." Ethan set down the phone and stared at the ceiling. Somewhere in this city, Clara West was probably doing the same thing. Two strangers separated by money and status and every logical reason this shouldn't work, both awake and wondering how their lives had led to this moment. He didn't sleep that night. Instead, he sat at the kitchen table with a notepad, writing out the pros and cons like this was a normal decision, like he was choosing between job offers or vacation destinations instead of whether to enter a fake marriage with his company's CEO. Pros: $5 million. Financial security for Lily. Save 1,200 jobs. Pay off mortgage. College fund. Maybe help other people for once instead of just surviving. Cons: lying to everyone. Risk of exposure. What if Lily finds out? What if this destroys my reputation? What if Clara isn't being completely honest? What if I can't pull this off? The list grew longer as the hours passed. By the time dawn light crept through the windows, Ethan had filled 4 pages and come no closer to an answer. At 6:30 a.m., he made coffee. At 7 o'clock, he woke Lily for school. They moved through their morning routine: cereal, backpack check, permission slip for the field trip, reminder about soccer practice on Tuesday. Normal. Everything aggressively normal. "You look terrible," Lily observed over her toast. "Thanks, sweetheart. You really know how to boost a dad's confidence." "I'm serious. Did you sleep at all?" "Not much." Ethan managed a smile. "Work stuff keeping me up." Lily frowned. "Is everything okay? Are we okay?" The question hit harder than it should have. "We're fine, Lil. I promise. Because if we're not, you can tell me. I'm not a baby." "I know you're not." Ethan reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "And yes, we're okay. Just some complicated decisions at work. Nothing for you to worry about." She didn't look entirely convinced, but she let it drop. At 7:45, Ethan drove her to school, watching as she joined her friends on the front steps. She turned and waved before disappearing inside. His daughter. His responsibility. The person who mattered more than anything. Ethan sat in the parking lot and pulled out his phone. 7:58 a.m. 2 minutes until Clara called. 2 minutes to make a decision that would change everything. He thought about Lily's college fund, currently sitting at $8,000 after years of scraping together whatever he could. He thought about the water heater that needed replacing and the car that wouldn't last another winter. He thought about the medical bills from Sarah's final months that still showed up occasionally, reminders of a past he couldn't quite escape. He thought about 1,200 people who would lose their jobs if he said no. And he thought about Clara West, standing in a dark garden, asking a stranger to save her because she had nowhere else to turn. The phone rang at exactly 8 a.m. Ethan answered. "Mr. Cole." Clara's voice was professional, but he could hear the tension underneath. "Have you made a decision?" Ethan closed his eyes, took a breath, and jumped. "Yes," he said. "I'll do it." Silence on the other end. Then quietly, "Thank you. I have conditions." "Of course." Lily stays completely out of this. No photos, no mentions, no involving her in any way. As far as she's concerned, this is a work arrangement that requires some public appearances. Nothing more. Agreed. I want everything in writing. The terms, the compensation, the timeline. I need to know exactly what I'm agreeing to. My lawyer will have contracts ready this afternoon. And if this falls apart, if the media finds out it's fake, or the board challenges it, or anything goes wrong, I want protection, a guarantee that Lily and I won't be collateral damage. "You'll have it," Clara paused. "Anything else?" "Yeah." Ethan's voice hardened. "No lies between us. I don't care what we tell everyone else, but when it's just you and me, I need the truth. Always. Can you do that?" "Yes." "Then I guess we have a deal." He could hear Clara exhale, a sound of relief so profound it made his chest ache. "I'll text you an address," she said. "Can you meet me there at noon?" "What's at noon?" "The courthouse." Clara's voice steadied, shifting back into CEO mode. "We're getting married today. The paperwork takes 48 hours to process, which means we need to file immediately if it's going to be legal by Sunday." Today. She wanted to do this today. Ethan's heart hammered. That's fast. "I know, but we're out of time." She hesitated. If you need to back out, no. The word came out firmer than Ethan expected. I gave you my word. I'll be there at noon. Thank you, Mr. Cole. Ethan, he corrected. If we're doing this, you should probably use my first name. Ethan. She tested it. Thank you, Ethan. The line went quiet. Neither of them hung up. Finally, Clara said, I know this isn't how anyone imagines their wedding day. Ethan almost laughed. No, definitely not. For what it's worth, I'll try to make it as painless as possible. Appreciated. And Ethan? Her voice softened slightly. I meant what I said last night. I wouldn't ask if I had any other choice. I know. See you at noon. The line went dead. Ethan sat in his car outside his daughter's school, phone still pressed to his ear, and tried to process what he'd just agreed to. In 4 hours, he was getting married. To his boss's boss. For $5 million. To save a company he'd never given much thought to and protect 1,200 people he barely knew. It was insane, reckless, the kind of decision that could destroy everything. But when Ethan thought about saying no, about walking away and letting Clara face this alone, about watching the company collapse and knowing he could have stopped it, something in his chest tightened with a certainty he couldn't explain. Maybe this was stupid. Maybe it would blow up in his face. But he'd made his choice. And at noon, Ethan Cole was going to become someone's husband, even if neither of them had any idea what came next. The courthouse stood like a monument to bureaucracy. Gray stone, steep steps, and an American flag that snapped in the October wind. Ethan arrived at 11:45, his hands shaking slightly as he gripped the steering wheel. He'd gone home after the phone call, showered, changed into his best suit, the navy one he'd worn to Sarah's funeral and hadn't touched since. It still fit, barely, though the shoulders felt tighter than he remembered. He'd stood in front of the bathroom mirror for 10 minutes, straightening his tie and trying to recognize the man staring back at him. A man about to marry a woman he didn't love for reasons he still wasn't sure he understood. His phone buzzed. Clara's text. 3rd floor, room 304. I'm already inside. Ethan climbed out of the car. The wind cut through his suit jacket, making him wish he'd brought a coat. Around him, the city moved with its usual Friday rhythm. People rushing to lunch meetings, tourists snapping photos. A homeless man asking for change near the entrance. Normal. Everything completely normal except for what Ethan was about to do. He took the stairs instead of the elevator, needing the extra time to settle his nerves. By the time he reached the 3rd floor, his heart was hammering from more than exertion. Room 304 had a frosted glass door with Marriage License Bureau stenciled in black letters. Ethan stood outside it for a long moment, his hand on the doorknob. Last chance to walk away. He pushed the door open. The room was smaller than he expected. Fluorescent lights, beige walls, a handful of plastic chairs that had seen better decades. A bored clerk sat behind a counter, typing something on a computer that looked older than Lily. And in the corner, standing with the kind of stillness that suggested she'd been waiting a while, was Clara West. She wore a cream-colored dress, simple, elegant, nothing that screamed wedding, but formal enough to suggest this mattered. Her dark hair was pulled back, and she held a small clutch purse with both hands like it was the only thing keeping her grounded. When she saw Ethan, relief flickered across her face. You came, she said quietly. I said I would. I know, but part of me thought you'd change your mind. Clara glanced at the clerk, who was studiously ignoring them. We should fill out the paperwork. They approached the counter together. The clerk, a middle-aged woman with reading glasses on a chain, looked up with the expression of someone who'd processed 1,000 of these and would process 1,000 more. Marriage license? She asked. Yes, Clara said. The woman slid 2 clipboards across the counter. Fill these out, both sides. Bring them back when you're done. Ethan took one clipboard, Clara the other. They sat in adjacent plastic chairs, and for several minutes the only sound was pen-scratching paper. Full name, date of birth, social security number, previous marriages. Ethan paused at that one. His hand hovered over the checkbox. He glanced at Clara, who was writing steadily, her pen moving with the kind of precision that suggested she'd done her homework on every single question. Previous marriages? He asked quietly. Clara didn't look up. I put none. You should put widowed. The words still hurt, even after 3 years. Ethan checked the box and moved on. Current address, emergency contact, occupation. The questions felt both too personal and not personal enough. They were about to legally bind their lives together, and yet this form knew nothing about who they actually were. Nothing about Ethan's daughter or Clara's company or the desperation that had brought them here. They returned the clipboards to the clerk, who reviewed them with the enthusiasm of someone reading assembly instructions. "Everything looks fine," she said finally. "That'll be $85. Clara already had her credit card out. The clerk processed it without comment. "You'll need 2 witnesses for the ceremony," the clerk continued. "Do you have anyone?" Ethan and Clara looked at each other. In the rush to get here, neither had thought about witnesses. Clara started. "I can grab someone from the hall," the clerk said, utterly unbothered by their lack of preparation. She called over her shoulder, "Janet, I need you and Mark for a ceremony." 2 people appeared from a back office, a woman in her 60s with kind eyes and a younger man who looked fresh out of college. They took positions on either side of the room with the practiced ease of people who did this regularly. "Judge Morrison will be ready in 5 minutes, the clerk said. "You can wait here." 5 minutes. Ethan sat back down, his mind spinning. This was happening, actually happening. In 5 minutes, he would be married. Clara remained standing, her back to him, staring at a poster about marriage license requirements. Her shoulders were rigid with tension. "Clara," Ethan said. She turned. "Are you sure about this?" "It's a little late for cold feet," she said, but her voice was gentle. "Why? Are you having second thoughts?" "I'm having about 100 thoughts, not all of them coherent." Ethan stood, crossing to where she waited. "But I need to know, is there anything else you're not telling me? Any other surprises waiting down the line?" Clara met his gaze. "No. What I told you last night is everything. The trust, the deadline, Victor Hale waiting to take control. It's all true. And you're certain this is the only way?" "I've spent 6 months trying to find alternatives. This is what's left." She paused. "But if you want to back out, I understand. Just say the word and we walk away. No hard feelings." Ethan studied her face, the careful control, the fear she was trying to hide. He thought about the question Lily had asked this morning. Are we okay? If he did this, they would be, more than okay, set for life. "I'm not backing out," he said. "I just needed to hear you say it again, that this is real." "It's real," Clara's voice dropped. "Unfortunately." A door opened at the far end of the room. A man in black robes emerged, Judge Morrison, presumably. He was in his 70s, with a white beard that would have looked right at home on Santa Claus. "Ms. West? Mr. Cole?" His voice was surprisingly warm. "We're ready for you." They followed him into a smaller chamber. The walls were wood-paneled, hung with official portraits and certificates. A desk sat at the front with the state seal mounted behind it. It looked nothing like the church where Ethan had married Sarah. No flowers, no music, no crowd of well-wishers, just 4 strangers about to make 2 people legally bound. Judge Morrison took his position behind the desk. "Please stand here," he said, gesturing to a spot before him. Ethan and Clara stood side by side, not touching, barely looking at each other. Janet and Mark positioned themselves as witnesses, producing a worn Bible from somewhere. "Dearly beloved," Judge Morrison began, and Ethan felt the unreality of the moment crash over him like a wave. This was his wedding day, and he felt nothing except numb. The judge continued through the traditional vows, for better or worse, in sickness and health till death do you part. Words that were supposed to mean something profound, words that people spoke when they were in love, when they'd built a foundation of trust and intimacy and shared dreams. Ethan spoke them anyway. So did Clara. Their voices flat and professional, like they were reading from a contract instead of making promises meant to last a lifetime. "Do you, Ethan Michael Cole, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do." "And do you, Clara Marie West, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband?" Clara's voice didn't waver. "I do. By the power vested in me by the state of New York, I now pronounce you husband and wife." Judge Morrison smiled. "You may kiss the bride." Ethan's heart stopped. He and Clara looked at each other. Neither had discussed this part. Neither had prepared for the moment when performance became requirement. Clara's eyes asked a silent question. Ethan gave the smallest nod. She leaned forward. Ethan met her halfway. Their lips touched for less than a second, brief, chaste, utterly devoid of passion. A technicality. A checkbox on a form. It was the saddest kiss Ethan had ever experienced. They pulled apart. Janet and Mark applauded politely. Judge Morrison was already pulling out the marriage certificate, signing it with a flourish. "Congratulations," he said, handing them each a pen. "Sign here." Ethan signed. The pen felt heavy in his hand. Clara signed beside him. Their signatures side by side on an official document that declared them married. It was done. "You'll receive the official certificate in the mail within 2 weeks," Judge Morrison said. "But this copy is legally binding as of today. Best wishes to you both." He shook their hands and disappeared back into his chambers, already done with them. Janet and Mark offered quiet congratulations before returning to their own work. And just like that, Ethan and Clara were alone. Married. Standing in an empty room with nothing but a piece of paper and the weight of what they'd just done. "Well," Clara said finally, "that was efficient." Ethan let out a breath that might have been a laugh. "Yeah, very romantic." "I should probably apologize for that." "Don't." Ethan folded the marriage certificate carefully. "We both knew what this was." Clara nodded. She looked exhausted suddenly, like the adrenaline that had carried her through the ceremony was finally wearing off. "There's a car waiting outside. We need to go to my lawyer's office to sign the contracts." "Now?" "The sooner we make this official, the business arrangement, I mean, the better." She hesitated. "Unless you need time." What Ethan needed was to wake up from whatever surreal dream this had become, but that wasn't an option. "Let's go," he said. The car was a sleek black sedan with a driver who said nothing as they climbed into the back seat. Ethan had never been in a car with a driver before. It felt wrong somehow. Too elegant for a man who'd spent the morning scrubbing cereal bowls and packing lunches. Clara sat on the opposite side, maintaining careful distance. She pulled out her phone and began typing rapidly. "Letting the board know?" Ethan asked. "Not yet. First the contracts, then I'll make the announcement." She glanced at him. "Are you okay? That's the second time you've asked me that. You look pale." "I just got married to a stranger. I think pale is appropriate." A ghost of a smile crossed Clara's face. "Fair point." They rode in silence through Midtown Manhattan. The city blurred past, tourists and business people and delivery trucks double-parked on every corner. Ethan watched it all with a strange sense of detachment, like he was seeing the world through glass. The law office was in a building that screamed money. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, security guards who nodded respectfully at Clara as they passed. They took an elevator to the 34th floor, where a receptionist greeted them by name. "Ms. West, Mr. Cole, Mr. Brennan is expecting you." She led them to a conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. A man in his 50s stood as they entered, tall, silver-haired, with the kind of presence that came from winning arguments for a living. "Clara!" He embraced her briefly. "Congratulations." "Thank you, Thomas." Clara gestured to Ethan. "This is Ethan Cole, my husband." The word sounded foreign in her mouth. Ethan shook Brennan's hand, trying not to feel like an imposter. "Please sit." Brennan gestured to the conference table where several thick documents waited. "I've prepared everything as you requested, Clara. Mr. Cole, I assume you'd like time to review the contracts before signing?" "Yes," Ethan said firmly. "Of course, I'll walk you through each section." For the next hour, Brennan explained the terms in excruciating detail. The marriage agreement, the non-disclosure clause, the compensation structure, the dissolution timeline. Every possible contingency had been anticipated, every loophole closed. It was the most comprehensive prenuptial agreement Ethan had ever heard of. Not that he had much experience with prenuptial agreements. The key points, Brennan summarized, are as follows. You will remain married for a minimum of 6 months. During this time, you'll make regular public appearances together to establish the legitimacy of the marriage. You'll attend Palmer Industries events as a couple. You'll be photographed, interviewed, and generally behave as newlyweds would. Ethan's stomach tightened. Interviewed? Nothing extensive, Clara interjected. Corporate magazine features. Maybe a charity gala or two. Nothing that would intrude on your private life. What about my daughter? Protected completely, Brennan assured him. The contract explicitly states that Lily Cole is not to be photographed, mentioned in press materials, or involved in any public aspect of this arrangement. Any violation of this clause gives you grounds to terminate the agreement immediately while retaining full compensation. That was something, at least. What about living arrangements? Ethan asked. Clara and Brennan exchanged a glance. You'll need to move into my home, Clara said carefully. Not permanently, but enough to establish residency. If anyone investigates our marriage, they need to find evidence that we actually live together. Ethan's mind reeled. Move in, with you. The house is large. You'll have your own space. I work long hours, so we won't be in each other's way. She paused. But yes, for this to be believable, we need to appear to share a home. What about Lily? She can come with you. The house has plenty of room. Good schools nearby. Clara's voice softened. I know this is complicated, but I promise I'll do everything possible to minimize disruption to her life. Ethan looked down at the contracts. $5 million. That's what this was worth. That's what it cost to turn his entire existence upside down. There's one more thing, Brennan said. He pulled out a separate folder. Clara has arranged for a trust to be established in Lily's name. $1 million, accessible when she turns 18 for education or other approved expenses. This is separate from your compensation and will be funded immediately upon contract signing. The air left Ethan's lungs. $1 million, he repeated. For Lily. Consider it insurance, Clara said. If anything happens to me, or if this arrangement falls apart in a way that affects you financially, your daughter is protected. She'll have her education paid for regardless of what happens between us. Ethan stared at her. This woman who'd asked a stranger to marry her was now offering to secure his daughter's future. It was generous, calculated, and deeply unsettling. Why? He asked. Because she's innocent in this, Clara said simply, and because you're taking a risk by helping me. The least I can do is make sure your child doesn't pay the price if this goes wrong. Brennan cleared his throat. If you need time to consider, I'll sign, Ethan said. Clara blinked. You're sure? You've protected Lily. You've put everything in writing. You've given me no reason not to trust the terms. Ethan picked up the pen Brennan offered. Let's make this official. He signed, page after page, initial here, signature there, committing himself to 6 months of performance, public appearances, and living a lie. Clara signed across from him. Their eyes met over the documents, and Ethan saw something in her expression he couldn't quite name. Relief, maybe, or gratitude, or possibly fear that this still might not be enough. When the last page was signed, Brennan collected the documents with a satisfied nod. Excellent. I'll file these immediately and begin the trust paperwork. He stood, shaking both their hands. Congratulations again. I hope this arrangement proves beneficial for you both. After Brennan left to make copies, Ethan and Clara sat alone in the conference room. The city sprawled below them, vast and indifferent to the deal they'd just made. So, Clara said, we're really doing this. Seems like? How do you feel? Ethan let out a long breath. Like I just sold my soul. In the most legally binding way possible. That's fair. Clara folded her hands on the table. For what it's worth, I'll try to make this as painless as I can. You keep saying that. Because I mean it. She looked at him directly. I know what I'm asking of you, Ethan. I know this turns your life upside down. And I know $5 million doesn't really make up for that. But I promise you, I won't make this harder than it has to be. What happens now? Ethan asked. Now I announce our marriage to the board tonight at an emergency meeting I've called for 6 o'clock. Emergency meeting on a Friday night. They'll love that. They'll love it even less when they hear why. Clara's expression hardened. But they can't challenge this. We're legally married. The trust terms are satisfied. Victor Hale loses his opening. And what do? Go home. Pack what you and Lily will need for the next few weeks. Tomorrow? I'll send a car to help you move. She paused. Unless you'd prefer to come tonight, After the board meeting? Ethan thought about Lily, waiting for him after school, about breaking the news that they were moving, about trying to explain this in a way that made any sense. Tomorrow, he said, I need time to talk to my daughter. Of course, Clara stood. The car will take you home. If you need anything, I'll call. She nodded. For a moment, they just looked at each other, these two people who were now legally bound but still essentially strangers. Thank you, Clara said quietly. I know I keep saying it, but thank you for doing this, for taking a chance on someone you barely know. Ask me in 6 months if I regret it, Ethan said. Fair enough. The car was waiting when Ethan emerged from the building. He gave the driver his address and spent the ride staring out the window, trying to figure out how to tell an 11-year-old that her life was about to change completely. The driver pulled up to Ethan's modest house at 3:15. School would be out in 20 minutes. Do you need me to wait, sir? The driver asked. Sir? Like Ethan was someone important. No, thank you. Inside, the house felt different, smaller, maybe, or just temporary. In 24 hours, this wouldn't be home anymore. They'd be living in Clara West's house, playing parts in a performance Ethan still wasn't sure he could pull off. He sat at the kitchen table and pulled out his phone. No messages. No missed calls. The world continuing normally while his spun completely off its axis. At 3:40, he heard the school bus, footsteps on the sidewalk, the front door bursting open. Dad, I'm home! Lily appeared in the kitchen doorway, backpack sliding off one shoulder, her hair escaping from its ponytail. She looked so young, so trusting. Hey, sweetheart. Ethan forced a smile. How was school? Fine. We had a pop quiz in math, but I think I did okay. She dropped her backpack on a chair. What's for dinner? Actually, I was thinking we could order pizza and talk. Lily's eyes narrowed. Talk about what? Come sit down. She did, wariness crossing her face. You're scaring me. Don't be scared. Nothing's wrong. Ethan took a breath. But there is something I need to tell you, something big. Are we moving? The question startled him. Why would you ask that? Because you have that look. Like when you told me we couldn't afford camp last summer. Like something bad is happening, but you're trying to make it sound okay. His daughter. Too smart for her own good. We are moving, Ethan admitted. Temporarily. But it's not bad. Actually, it might be really good. Where? Do you remember me telling you about my company's CEO, Miss West? Lily nodded slowly. Well, she and I... Ethan struggled to find the right words. We've entered into a business arrangement, one that requires us to live in the same house for a while. A business arrangement? She needs help with something, and in exchange, she's offering us financial support. Enough to pay for college, enough to make things easier for us. Lily stared at him. What kind of help? This was the hard part, the lie he'd have to tell his daughter because the truth was too complicated. She needs someone she can trust, Ethan said carefully. Someone to help her with some personal matters. I know this sounds vague, but did you marry her? The question hit like a physical blow. Ethan's mouth opened, closed. No sound came out. Dad? Lily's voice was very quiet. Did you marry her? How did you... You're wearing a ring. Ethan looked down. The simple gold band Clara had given him at the courthouse. He'd forgotten he was wearing it. You never wear jewelry, Lily continued, and you've been acting weird since last night, and now we're moving into some woman's house. Her eyes filled with tears. You married her without telling me. Lily, how could you? The tears spilled over. You married someone and you didn't even tell me? I'm your daughter. I know, sweetheart, and I'm sorry. Ethan reached for her hand, but she pulled away. It happened very fast, too fast, and it's complicated. You don't love her. It wasn't a question. No, Ethan admitted. I don't. Then why did you marry her? Because I'm desperate. Because $5 million could change our lives. Because I thought I was doing the right thing. Because sometimes adults make difficult choices, Ethan said. Because she needed help, and I could provide it. And because in exchange she's making sure you'll have everything you need. college, security, a future where you don't have to worry. I don't care about that, Lily's voice broke. I care about you. About us. I don't want to live in some stranger's house. She's not a stranger. She's not Mom. The words hung in the air between them, sharp, painful, true. Ethan felt his own eyes burning. No, she's not Mom. And I'm not trying to replace Mom. This isn't about that. Then what is it about? It's about making sure we're okay, Ethan said quietly. About giving you opportunities. About not having to worry every month if we can pay the bills. I never asked you to worry about that. I know, but I do anyway, because I'm your dad and that's my job. Lily wiped her eyes angrily. For how long? How long what? How long do we have to live there? How long are you married to her? 6 months? Maybe less if things work out quickly. And then what? Then we come home, and things go back to normal. Normal? Lily laughed bitterly. Nothing about this is normal, Dad. She stood abruptly, grabbing her backpack. I'm going to my room. Lily, wait. I don't want to talk about it anymore. She was already halfway to the stairs. I just need to be alone right now. Her door slammed a moment later. Ethan sat in the kitchen, staring at the gold band on his finger, feeling like the worst father in the world. His phone buzzed. Clara. How did it go? Ethan typed and deleted 3 responses before finally settling on, as well as could be expected, I'm sorry, not your fault. Still, if there's anything I can do... Ethan set down the phone without responding. What could Clara do? His daughter was upstairs crying because her father had married a stranger without telling her. No amount of money fixed that. He ordered pizza anyway. When it arrived, he called up the stairs. Lily, dinner! No response. He tried again. Please come eat something. Finally, reluctantly, she appeared. Her eyes were red but dry. She sat across from him and took a single slice, eating in silence. I'm sorry, Ethan said. I should have told you before I did it. You deserved that. Lily didn't look at him. Yeah, I did. I was trying to protect you. By lying? By not dumping all the complicated adult stuff on you before I had to. I'm not a baby, Dad. I can handle complicated. I know you're not. Ethan reached across the table. This time she didn't pull away. And you're right. I should have included you in this decision. It affects both of us. Can I meet her? Lily asked suddenly. Ms. West? Your wife. The word dripped sarcasm. I should probably meet the woman whose house we're moving into. Of course, tomorrow when we move our stuff. Lily picked at her pizza crust. What's she like? Smart, driven, very focused on her work. Does she even like kids? I don't know, Ethan admitted. We haven't discussed it. Great. This just keeps getting better. But some of the anger had faded from Lily's voice, replaced by something closer to resignation. What do I tell my friends? Tell them your dad's girlfriend, wife. My wife needed help with some things, and we're staying with her for a while. You don't have to explain everything. Because you're not explaining everything to me. Ethan sighed. Fair point. They finished dinner in uneasy silence. Afterward, Lily helped him pack clothes, toiletries, her favorite books, and stuffed animals. The essentials for a temporary move that felt disturbingly permanent. At 9 o'clock, Ethan's phone rang. Clara. How did the board meeting go? He asked. About as well as expected. Shock, skepticism, Victor Hale's allies demanding proof. Her voice was tired. But the marriage certificate is legitimate. The trust terms are satisfied. They can be angry all they want. It doesn't change the facts. So you're safe? For now. Though Victor himself sent a rather pointed email congratulating me on my sudden nuptials. Clara paused. How's Lily? Ethan glanced toward the stairs. Adjusting. It's hard on her. I can imagine. When you arrive tomorrow, I'll make sure to give her space. Let her settle in at her own pace. Thank you. Ethan? Clara's voice softened. I know this is difficult for both of you, but we'll figure it out. Will we? We have to. After they hung up, Ethan stood in Lily's doorway. She was in bed reading by lamplight. "Knock, knock," he said. "Come in." He sat on the edge of her bed. "I know this isn't what you wanted." "No. But I promise you I'm doing my best to make this okay, to protect you and give you a good life." Lily set down her book. "Do you like her, even a little?" "I don't really know her yet," Ethan said honestly. "But she seems like a decent person, and she's been very clear that you're off limits for any publicity or stress. She's trying to protect you too." "That's something, I guess." "Yeah, it is." Lily was quiet for a moment. Then, "Dad, are you going to fall in love with her?" The question caught Ethan completely off guard. "What?" "In movies, people get married for fake reasons and then fall in love for real. Is that going to happen?" "Lily, this isn't a movie." "I know, but you didn't answer the question." Ethan thought about Clara, about the brief kiss at the courthouse, the careful distance she maintained, the business arrangement they'd signed in triplicate. "No," he said. "This is a job, nothing more. In 6 months, we'll divorce and come home." "Promise?" "Promise." Lily nodded, seemingly satisfied. "Okay. I'm going to sleep now. Good night, sweetheart." "Night, Dad." Ethan retreated to his own room. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, the gold band heavy on his finger. Tomorrow they moved. Tomorrow this performance became real. And despite what he'd just promised his daughter, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that nothing about the next 6 months would go according to plan. The moving truck arrived at 10 a.m., though calling it a truck felt generous. It was more like a luxury van with the Palmer Industries logo discreetly printed on the side. 2 men in crisp uniforms helped load the boxes Ethan and Lily had packed the night before, a pitifully small collection that revealed just how little they actually owned. Lily watched from the porch, arms crossed, her expression unreadable. She'd barely spoken at breakfast, pushing cereal around her bowl while Ethan tried to make conversation that went nowhere. "That's everything, sir," one of the movers said. "We'll follow you to the address." "Sir." Again with the sir. Ethan nodded and turned to his daughter. "Ready?" "Do I have a choice?" "Lily." "I'm kidding." But she wasn't smiling. "Let's just go." They drove in silence through the suburbs, then into the wealthier neighborhoods where houses grew larger and farther apart, hidden behind gates and manicured hedges. Ethan had Googled Clara's address the night before, but seeing it in person was different. The GPS led them to a private road where estates sat on multi-acre lots, the kind of homes that appeared in architecture magazines. Clara's house, mansion really, was at the end of a cul-de-sac. Modern design, all glass and clean lines, with a driveway that could fit 6 cars. The moving van pulled in behind them. "This is where she lives?" Lily's voice was small. "Apparently." "Dad, this is like a museum. We can't live here." Before Ethan could respond, the front door opened. Clara emerged wearing jeans and a simple sweater, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. It was the most casual Ethan had seen her, and somehow it made her seem more intimidating rather than less. She approached their car. Ethan got out first, then opened Lily's door. "Hi," Clara said. Her eyes went to Lily immediately. "You must be Lily. I'm Clara." Lily said nothing. "Thank you for having us." Ethan filled the silence. "I know this wasn't exactly planned." "None of this was planned." Clara's smile was careful. "But we'll make it work. Come inside. I'll show you your rooms." The house was even more impressive inside. Vaulted ceilings, an open floor plan, furniture that looked like it cost more than Ethan's car. Everything was pristine, perfectly arranged, utterly impersonal. "The kitchen is through here," Clara said, leading them past a dining room with a table that could seat 12. "Help yourself to anything. I've stocked the fridge with some basics, but if there's anything specific you need, just let me know." Lily was staring at everything with wide eyes. Ethan felt equally out of place. They climbed a curved staircase to the second floor. Clara stopped at the first door. "Lily, this is your room. It has its own bathroom and a desk if you need to do homework. There's a TV, though I don't know what shows you like, so..." She trailed off, looking uncertain for the first time since they'd arrived. Lily pushed open the door. The room was beautiful, spacious with large windows overlooking the backyard, decorated in soft grays and whites. Nothing personal, but nothing childish either. A a blank canvas waiting for someone to make it theirs. It's nice, Lily said quietly. I'm glad you think so. Your things should be here soon. Clara gestured down the hall. Ethan, you're in the next room over. I'm at the end of the hall if you need anything. Separate rooms, of course. This was a business arrangement after all. Ethan's room was similar to Lily's, large, neutral, expensive. A king-size bed dominated the space, with a sitting area by the windows and an ensuite bathroom that was bigger than his bedroom back home. I know it's a lot, Clara said from the doorway, but try to make yourself comfortable. This is your home now, temporarily, at least. It's very generous, Ethan said. It's the least I can do. She paused. The movers will be here soon with your things. I'll give you space to settle in, but later, if you're up for it, we should probably discuss how this is going to work. The public appearances, the story we're telling. Right, the performance. Something flickered in Claire's expression. Yes, the performance. She left before Ethan could say anything else. The movers arrived 20 minutes later, efficiently distributing boxes to the appropriate rooms. Ethan started unpacking, hanging clothes in a closet that could have held his entire wardrobe 3 times over. Each item he put away felt like another step into this strange new reality. A knock on his door. Lily stood in the hallway. Can I come in? Of course. She entered, looking around with the same overwhelmed expression she'd worn since they arrived. This is crazy. Yeah, it is. Her house is like something out of a magazine. Does she even live here? It's so empty, Ethan finished. I was going to say perfect, but empty works too. Lily sat on the edge of his bed. Do you think she's lonely? The question surprised him. Why would you think that? Because it doesn't feel like anyone actually lives here. It's all nice and clean and expensive, but there's no... She struggled for the word. No heart. Our house was tiny and kind of old, but it felt like home. This just feels like a hotel. Ethan hadn't expected his daughter to be so perceptive. Maybe she's just very private. Maybe, Lily picked at the comforter. She seems nervous around me. You think so? Yeah, like she doesn't know how to talk to kids. Lily looked up. Has she ever been married before? No. At least not that I know of. Does she have any family? Ethan realized he didn't know. Clara had mentioned her grandfather, the trust, the company legacy, but nothing about siblings, parents, anyone else. I'm not sure. You married someone and you don't even know if she has a family? It's complicated, Lily. Everything about this is complicated, but she said it without anger this time, just resignation. They spent the rest of the morning unpacking. Around 1 o'clock, there was a soft knock on Ethan's door. Clara stood outside, still looking uncertain. I ordered lunch. Chinese food. I wasn't sure what you liked, so I got a variety. It's downstairs if you're hungry. Thank you, Ethan said. They gathered in the kitchen, a massive space with marble countertops and professional-grade appliances that looked barely used. Clara had set out containers of food on the island. Help yourselves, she said. There's plenty. They filled plates in awkward silence. Lily took small portions of everything, while Ethan tried to act normal, even though eating lunch with his new wife in her mansion felt anything but. They sat at the kitchen table. Clara had clearly chosen it because it was smaller than the formal dining room, but it still felt too large for 3 people. So, Clara said, attempting conversation. Lily, your dad mentioned you play soccer? Lily nodded, not looking up from her plate. What position? Midfielder. That's good. Clara was floundering. I don't know much about soccer, I'm afraid, but I'm sure you're very talented. Lily shrugged. The silence stretched uncomfortably. Ethan jumped in. Lily's team made it to the regional finals last year. They didn't win, but it was still impressive. That is impressive, Clara agreed. She turned to Lily. Will you keep playing while you're here? I can look into leagues in the area. I don't know, Lily said quietly. My team is back home. The words hung in the air, back home. Not here, never here. Clara's face fell slightly. Of course. I understand. Another painful silence. Ethan searched for something, anything, to fill it. The house is beautiful, he tried. Have you lived here long? 3 years. I bought it after my last promotion. Clara pushed food around her plate. It's too big for one person, really, but I thought, I don't know what I thought. It's a great space, Ethan offered. It's empty, Clara said bluntly. Lily's right. It doesn't feel like a home. It feels like a showroom. Lily looked up, surprised that Clara had heard her earlier comment. I work too much, Clara continued. I'm never here, and when I am, I'm usually in my office. I bought all this furniture, hired a decorator, tried to make it look like the houses in magazines, but I never actually lived in it. She set down her fork. I'm not very good at the personal stuff, clearly. There was something raw in her admission, something real. You don't have to apologize for your house, Ethan said gently. I'm not apologizing. Clara looked at Lily. I'm explaining why this might feel strange, because it is strange for all of us. And I don't really know how to make it less strange. Lily studied Clara for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, she said, You could start by not trying so hard. Clara blinked. What? You're acting like you have to impress us or something. We're already here. You don't have to perform. Lily's voice was matter-of-fact. Just be normal. A laugh escaped Clara, surprised and genuine. Be normal, okay? I can try that. Also, Lily added, the orange chicken is really good. You should try some. Clara looked at the container of orange chicken. Then, with something that might have been a real smile, she took a piece. The tension didn't disappear completely, but it eased. They finished lunch with occasional bits of conversation, nothing deep, nothing profound, just three people trying to find their footing in an impossible situation. After lunch, Clara cleared her throat. Ethan, when you have a moment, we should probably discuss the logistics. Right, Lily, can you give us a few minutes? Lily grabbed her phone and headed upstairs. Once she was gone, Clara's demeanor shifted back to business mode. The board is expecting me to introduce you at the company gala next Friday, she said. It's our biggest fundraiser of the year. Everyone will be there. Press, investors, the full board. Next Friday, that's soon. I know, but we need to establish this marriage publicly as quickly as possible. The longer we wait, the more questions people will ask. Clara pulled out her phone, scrolling through what looked like a schedule. Between now and then, we should be seen together. Dinner at a nice restaurant. Maybe a walk in the park. Something that gets photographed but looks natural. Staged, candid photos. Exactly. She didn't sound happy about it either. I've hired a publicist to help manage the narrative. She'll coordinate with certain photographers who can be trusted to make it look organic. This is surreal, Ethan muttered. Welcome to my world. Clara set down her phone. There's something else. The gala is formal. You'll need a tuxedo. I don't own a tuxedo. I've arranged for a tailor to come by on Wednesday. He'll fit you for one. And before you say anything about the cost, it's part of the arrangement. You're representing Palmer Industries now. You need to look the part. Ethan wanted to argue, but she was right. He couldn't show up to a high society gala in his one decent suit. What about Lily? He asked. I can't leave her alone for these events. I've thought about that. Mrs. Yates, your neighbor who usually watches her. I'd like to hire her full-time to stay here when we need to be out. The pay would be excellent, and it would give Lily consistency with someone she already knows and trusts. Ethan stared at her. You've really thought this through. I've thought about nothing else for weeks. Clara's voice was tired. I know I'm asking a lot. I know this disrupts everything, but I'm trying to make it as smooth as possible for all of us. I appreciate that. They sat in silence for a moment, then Clara asked quietly, How is Lily really doing with all this? She's angry, hurt that I didn't tell her before the wedding, scared about what this means. Ethan met Clara's eyes. But she's tough. She'll adjust. She seems like a remarkable kid. She is, pride crept into Ethan's voice. Smarter than me, that's for sure. She saw through this whole thing in about 5 seconds. What did you tell her? That it's a business arrangement, that we're helping each other, that it's temporary. Ethan paused. She asked if I was going to fall in love with you. Clara's expression flickered. What did you say? I said no. That this is a job, nothing more. Right. Clara's voice was carefully neutral. Of course, that's what we agreed. Is it not? No, it is, absolutely. She stood abruptly. I should let you finish settling in. If you need anything, I'll be in my office. Down the hall, last door on the left. She was gone before Ethan could respond. He sat alone in the pristine kitchen, wondering what he'd said wrong. The rest of the weekend passed in careful politeness. Clara worked most of Saturday, emerging only for meals. Lily explored the house and backyard, finding a swimming pool that hadn't been used in months, and a library with books that looked unread. On Sunday morning, Ethan woke to the smell of coffee. He found Clara in the kitchen, already dressed for the day, reading something on her tablet. There's coffee, she said without looking up. And I made pancakes. They might not be great. I don't cook often. Ethan poured himself a cup. The pancakes sat on a plate, slightly burned around the edges, but recognizable. The gesture was unexpected. Thank you, he said. Don't thank me yet. They might be inedible. He tried one. It was dry and a little crispy, but not terrible. They're fine. Clara finally looked up, skepticism clear on her face. You're lying. Okay, they're a little dry, but the effort is appreciated. A small smile crossed her face. I watched a YouTube video. Apparently I need more practice. Lily appeared in the doorway, drawn by the smell of food. She looked at the pancakes, then at Clara, then at Ethan. Did she make those? Lily asked. I did, Clara confirmed. Fair warning, they're not very good. Can I try one? Clara slid the plate toward her. Lily took a bite, chewed thoughtfully, then grabbed the syrup and doused the pancake. There, she said. Now they're good. Clara laughed, actually laughed, and something in the kitchen shifted. Some invisible wall came down. Noted, Clara said. More syrup, less burning. They ate breakfast together, the conversation coming easier than before. Lily asked about the pool, and Clara admitted she'd never used it. Ethan mentioned the library, and Clara confessed she'd bought the books for decoration. You bought books for decoration? Lily was horrified. That's like a crime. I know, I meant to read them. I just never had time. Can I read them? Clara blinked. Of course, read anything you want. After breakfast, Lily disappeared into the library with an armful of books. Clara and Ethan cleaned up the kitchen in companionable silence. She's warming up to you, Ethan observed. Maybe. Or she's just excited about the books. Clara rinsed a plate. I meant what I said yesterday. She's remarkable. You've done a great job with her. I can't take all the credit. Her mother... Ethan trailed off. You don't talk about her much. Your wife. Ex-wife. Technically. Ethan dried a pan. Sarah died 3 years ago. Cancer. By the time they found it, there wasn't much they could do. I'm sorry. Thank you. Ethan set down the towel. It was hard, on both of us, but we got through it. Just the two of you? Yeah, Sarah's parents passed before Lily was born. Mine live in Florida and aren't very involved, so it's been just us. He looked at Clara. That's why this is complicated. Lily's used to it being just us. Bringing someone else into that equation, even temporarily, disrupts the balance, Clara finished. Exactly. They finished cleaning in silence. Then Clara said, For what it's worth, I'll try not to disrupt it more than necessary. I know I'm the outsider here. You're not an outsider. Ethan struggled for the right word. You're part of this now, whether any of us planned it or not. Clara nodded slowly. Part of this. Right. Monday morning brought reality crashing back. Ethan had to return to work, his normal job in operations, where he'd now have to face colleagues who might or might not know their CEO had married one of them. Clara left even earlier, back to running her company and managing the fallout from her sudden marriage. Lily started at her new school, a private academy that Clara had arranged, complete with a scholarship that covered everything. She came home subdued, reporting that the kids were fine and the teachers okay, which Ethan knew meant she was struggling. Give it time, he told her. That's what everyone keeps saying. Give it time. Wait and see. It'll get better. Lily dropped her backpack on the floor. What if it doesn't? Then we'll figure something else out. Promise? Promise. Wednesday, the tailor arrived, an elderly Italian man named Giuseppe, who measured Ethan with the kind of precision usually reserved for surgeries. He clucked and muttered and pinned, then promised the tuxedo would be perfect for the gala. Thursday evening, Clara called a meeting in her study. "Tomorrow's the gala," she said without preamble. "We need to coordinate our story." Ethan sat across from her desk. "What story?" "How we met, how long we've been dating, why we got married so quickly." Clara had notes spread out before her. "The truth isn't an option, obviously, but we need something consistent, something that holds up to questions." "Okay, so what's the story?" Clara looked almost embarrassed. "We met at the office. You came to deliver a report one evening and we started talking. We connected over, I don't know, something normal. Coffee, shared interests." "What shared interests do we have?" "I have no idea. That's the problem." She rubbed her temples. "This would be easier if we actually knew each other." "Then maybe we should fix that," Ethan said. Clara looked up. "What?" "We've been living together for almost a week. We've barely talked. We don't know anything real about each other. If we're supposed to convince people we're married, maybe we should act like it." "You want to, what, get to know each other?" "It's a radical concept, I know." A smile tugged at Clara's mouth. "All right, what do you want to know?" Ethan thought about it. "What's your favorite book?" "That's your question?" "You bought a whole library for decoration. I'm curious if you have an actual favorite." Clara leaned back in her chair. "Pride and Prejudice. I read it when I was 13 and must have read it 20 times since. It's ridiculous and romantic and I love it." "Really? Why do you sound surprised?" "Because you seem more like a, I don't know, business biography person." "I read those too, but Elizabeth Bennet was my hero growing up. Smart, stubborn, refusing to marry for anything less than love." Claire's expression was wistful. "Ironic, given my current situation." "You married for survival," Ethan said. "That's different." "Is it?" They looked at each other across the desk. Something passed between them, understanding maybe, or recognition of their shared predicament. "My favorite book is The Count of Monte Cristo," Ethan offered. "I read it after Sarah died, something about starting over, building a new life from nothing. It helped." "That's a good one," Clara said quietly. "What about food? What's your favorite meal?" "Chinese takeout, which you already know, since that's what I ordered." Clara smiled. "I'm not very adventurous with food. I eat to fuel myself, not for enjoyment." "That's sad." "Maybe. Your turn." "Anything Lily and I make together. We do Sunday breakfast, usually pancakes, which we're apparently much better at than you." He grinned. "And spaghetti. She makes the sauce, I make the pasta. It's our thing." "That sounds nice." They continued like this for an hour, trading questions and answers. Favorite movies, worst fears, childhood dreams. Nothing earth-shattering, but real. By the time they finished, Ethan felt like he was talking to a person instead of a CEO. "So, our story," Clara said eventually. "We met at the office, started talking about books. And food," Ethan interjected. "And food. We connected, started seeing each other quietly because of the professional complications. And when we realized we were serious, we decided not to wait." That's actually believable. It's also mostly true. We did meet at the office. We are getting to know each other. The timeline is just accelerated. Clara closed her notebook. "Think you can sell it tomorrow night?" "Guess we'll find out." Friday arrived too quickly. Ethan spent the day at work fielding curious looks and whispered questions. Word had spread that the CEO had married someone from operations. People wanted details he couldn't give. He left early to get ready for the gala. The tuxedo Giuseppe had created fit perfectly, better than anything Ethan had ever worn. He stood in front of the mirror, barely recognizing himself. A knock on his door. Clara entered, then stopped. She was wearing a deep blue gown that hugged her figure before flowing to the floor. Her hair was swept up, diamond earrings catching the light. She looked stunning, like someone who belonged at galas and in magazines. And Ethan looked like he was playing dress-up. "You look nervous," Clara observed. "I am nervous. I've never been to anything like this." "Neither had I, the first time." Then I realized something. They're all just people. Richer people, more powerful people, but still just people. Most of them are as insecure as we are. They just hide it better. That's supposed to make me feel better? Yes. She crossed to him and adjusted his bow tie, which had been sitting slightly crooked. Her fingers brushed his collar. There. Perfect. They stood close enough that Ethan could smell her perfume, the same subtle scent from the night they met. Clara met his eyes, her hand still on his tie. We can do this, she said quietly. Together. Together, Ethan echoed. A voice from the hallway. Wow. They stepped apart. Lily stood in the doorway, eyes wide. You both look like movie stars, she said. Thank you, sweetheart, Ethan smiled. You'll be okay here with Mrs. Yates? I'll be fine. I'm 11, not 5. But Lily came forward and hugged him tightly. Good luck, Dad. Thanks, Lil. Lily turned to Clara. You look really pretty. Clara seemed genuinely touched. Thank you, Lily. That means a lot. The car, an actual limousine this time, was waiting outside. Ethan and Clara slid into the back seat, the leather cool against his skin. As they pulled away from the house, Clara reached over and took his hand. What are you doing? Ethan asked. The driver might talk. We should start acting the part. But she squeezed his fingers gently. Is this okay? Her hand was warm in his, small and delicate, but with a firm grip. Yeah, Ethan said. It's okay. They rode in silence, hands linked, heading toward a gala where they'd perform Being in Love for a room full of strangers. And for the first time since this insanity began, Ethan felt like maybe, just maybe, they could actually pull this off. The hotel ballroom glittered like something out of a fairy tale. Crystal chandeliers cast prismatic light across marble floors. Ice sculptures stood at strategic intervals, catching the glow and throwing rainbows. Women in designer gowns mingled with men in tuxedos, champagne flutes catching the light like tiny stars. Ethan had never felt more out of place in his life. Breathe, Clara murmured beside him. Her hand rested lightly in the crook of his elbow. You look like you're about to face a firing squad. That might be less terrifying. Doubtful. She nodded toward a cluster of men near the bar. See the tall one with the silver hair? That's Marcus Chen, head of our largest competitor. He's been trying to poach our top engineers for 2 years. Should I be taking notes? Just smile and nod if he talks to you. And whatever you do, don't mention the Henderson project. He doesn't know about it yet. Ethan's head was already spinning. There's a Henderson project? Clara patted his arm. Relax. I'm kidding. Mostly. They moved into the crowd and immediately people began gravitating toward them. Or rather, toward Clara. Ethan was just the unfamiliar accessory she happened to be wearing. Clara, darling! A woman in red silk descended on them. I heard the most extraordinary rumor. Tell me it isn't true. Depends on the rumor, Patricia. Clara's smile was perfectly calibrated, warm but controlled. That you got married to someone from inside the company. Patricia's eyes slid to Ethan with barely concealed curiosity. Someone we've never even heard of. Then I'm afraid the rumor is true. Clara turned to Ethan. Patricia Nguyen, meet my husband, Ethan Cole. Ethan, Patricia sits on our board. Ethan extended his hand. Pleasure to meet you. Patricia's handshake was brief, her assessment thorough. How fascinating. And where exactly have you been hiding, Mr. Cole? I work in operations. Not much reason for our paths to cross before. Until they did, Clara interjected smoothly. Funny how that happens. Funny indeed. Patricia's tone suggested she found nothing funny about it. You'll have to tell me the whole story later, Clara. I'm absolutely dying to know how this happened. She drifted away, already pulling out her phone. That went well, Ethan said dryly. That went exactly as expected. Patricia thrives on gossip. By the end of the night, she'll have asked 20 people about you and constructed 3 different theories about our marriage. Should I be worried? Only if you can't keep your story straight. Clara's smile didn't waver, but Ethan heard the edge in her voice. Speaking of which, here comes test number 2. A man approached, mid-50s, expensive suit, the kind of confidence that came from always being the smartest person in the room, or at least believing he was. Clara. His voice was smooth as aged whiskey. What a surprise to see you here with company. Victor. Clara's demeanor shifted subtly, cooler, more guarded. I didn't think galas were your style. They're not. But when I heard you'd be making an announcement, I couldn't resist. Victor's eyes moved to Ethan. And who's this? So this was Victor Hale, the corporate predator who'd been waiting to devour Palmer Industries. Ethan felt his spine straighten instinctively. Victor Hale, this is Ethan Cole, my husband. Clara's emphasis on the last word was slight but deliberate. Ethan, Victor owns Meridian Capital. Congratulations on your marriage, Victor said, extending his hand. His grip was firm, just shy of aggressive. Quite sudden, wasn't it? When you know, Ethan replied evenly. Indeed. Victor's smile didn't reach his eyes. I have to admit, Clara, I'm impressed. I didn't think you had it in you to be so spontaneous. People are full of surprises. Apparently. Victor pulled out his phone, glancing at something on the screen. Though I do wonder about the timing. Your grandfather's trust terms, the upcoming deadline, are satisfied, Clara cut in, as of last Friday. So whatever plans you had, Victor, I'm afraid they're moot. For just a moment, Victor's mask slipped. Anger flashed in his eyes, followed quickly by calculation. When he spoke again, his voice was dangerously soft. I suppose congratulations are in order then, to both of you. He raised his champagne glass in a mock toast. I hope it all works out exactly as you planned. He walked away, shoulders tight with barely contained fury. Ethan let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. That was a threat, Clara finished. He's not going to let this go easily. What can he do? You said the trust terms are satisfied. They are, but Victor doesn't need the trust to cause problems. He can launch investigations, plant stories in the media, dig into our backgrounds looking for anything that doesn't add up. She squeezed Ethan's arm. We need to be very careful from here on out. Before Ethan could respond, a chime rang through the ballroom. A woman in a burgundy gown took the stage. The event coordinator, presumably. Ladies and gentlemen, if you could please take your seats, dinner will be served shortly, and our host for the evening has a few words she'd like to share. Clara's hand tightened on Ethan's arm. That's my cue. They made their way to the head table where name cards marked their seats. Board members and their spouses filled the surrounding chairs, all watching Clara and Ethan with varying degrees of curiosity and skepticism. Ethan sat, hyper-aware of every movement, which fork to use, how to sit, where to put his napkin. Sarah had taught him basic etiquette, but this was different. This was performance art disguised as dinner. The first course arrived, some kind of foam that Ethan couldn't identify. He watched Clara, mimicking her movements, spoon from the outside, small bites, no slurping. Across the table, an older man with a British accent leaned forward. So, Mr. Cole, what is it you do at Palmer Industries? I work in operations, supply chain management mostly. Fascinating. The man's tone suggested it was anything but. And how did you and Clara meet? Here it was, the story they'd rehearsed. At the office, actually, I was delivering a quarterly report one evening. Clara was still working. Ethan glanced at his supposed wife. We started talking about books, of all things. Turned out we had similar taste. Books, the man repeated. How romantic. It was, actually. Clara joined the conversation smoothly. Ethan recommended The Count of Monte Cristo. I told him about Pride and Prejudice. We ended up talking for 2 hours. And that led to marriage? Not immediately. We kept running into each other, coffee breaks, late nights in the office. Eventually, we admitted there was something there worth exploring. Clara reached over and placed her hand on Ethan's. When you connect with someone, you don't wait around. It was a good story, believable, based enough in truth that they could sell it. The man seemed satisfied, turning to his neighbor to share the gossip. Clara's hand remained on Ethan's for a moment longer than necessary before pulling away. The meal continued through multiple courses. Ethan lost track after the third one. Around them, conversation flowed. Business deals, stock prices, who was divorcing whom, the wealthy at play, utterly comfortable in their element. Finally, dessert was cleared and the coordinator returned to the stage. And now, the moment we've all been waiting for. Please welcome Clara West, CEO of Palmer Industries. Applause filled the ballroom. Clara stood, smoothing her gown, and walked to the podium. Under the lights, she looked powerful, in control, everything a CEO should be. "Thank you all for coming tonight," she began. "This gala raises money for causes I care deeply about. Education initiatives, small business development, opportunities for underprivileged communities. Your generosity makes a real difference." She continued with the prepared remarks, thanking sponsors and donors. But Ethan could see the tension in her shoulders. This was just the warm-up. "Before we conclude, sir," Clara said, "I want to share some personal news. Many of you have heard rumors this week. I'm here to confirm them." The room went silent. "Last Friday, I married Ethan Cole." Clara's eyes found Ethan in the crowd. "Ethan works in our operations division. He's brilliant, dedicated, and somehow puts up with my impossible schedule. We've kept our relationship quiet for professional reasons, but we reached a point where we didn't want to wait any longer." She was good at this. The slight smile, the warmth in her voice. Anyone who didn't know better would think she was genuinely in love. "I know this comes as a surprise to many of you, but the best things in life usually do. Ethan has reminded me that there's more to life than board meetings and quarterly earnings, that sometimes the most important decisions are the ones made with your heart." Ethan felt his chest tighten. She was laying it on thick, but that's what the performance required. "So please join me in celebrating not just the success of Palmer Industries, but the beginning of this new chapter in my life. Thank you." Applause erupted. People stood. Clara left the podium and walked directly to Ethan, who rose to meet her. When she reached him, she did something they hadn't rehearsed. She kissed him. Not the brief chaste kiss from the courthouse. A real kiss, her hands on his shoulders, his automatically going to her waist. It lasted just long enough to sell the story before she pulled back, smiling at him like he was the only person in the room. Cameras flashed, people cheered, and Ethan stood there, his heart hammering, wondering what the hell had just happened. Clara's eyes held a question. "Too much?" Ethan managed to smile. "Just right." They were immediately surrounded by well-wishers. Congratulations came from all sides. Board members who'd been skeptical at dinner now offered handshakes and forced smiles. The performance had worked. Through it all, Ethan felt Victor Hale's eyes on them, watching, calculating, looking for cracks in the facade. The rest of the evening blurred together, more champagne, more small talk, more performing. Ethan's face hurt from smiling, his hand cramped from shaking so many others. Clara never left his side, playing her role perfectly. The devoted wife, the successful CEO, the woman who had it all. Around 11, she finally whispered, "Can we go?" "Please." They made their excuses, thanked the hosts, and escaped to the limousine. The door closed behind them, muffling the noise of the city, and Clara immediately kicked off her heels. "That was exhausting," she said, leaning her head back against the seat. "You were incredible. I almost believed it myself." "That's the idea." She turned to look at him. "Sorry about the kiss. I should have warned you." "It's fine. It sold the story." "It did?" Clara was quiet for a moment. "Thank you for tonight, for playing along, for making it believable. We're in this together, right?" "Right." They rode in silence for a few minutes. Then Ethan asked, "Do you think Victor believed it?" Clara's expression darkened. "No, Victor's too smart for that. He knows something doesn't add up, but as long as he can't prove it, we're safe. And if he can prove it, then we're in serious trouble." The weight of that settled between them. This wasn't over. The gala had been one battle, but the war with Victor Hale was just beginning. When they arrived home, the house was quiet. Mrs. Yates had left a note saying Lily was asleep. Clara and Ethan stood in the foyer, still in their formal clothes, the evening catching up with them. "I need to tell you something," Clara said suddenly. Ethan's stomach dropped. "What?" "Victor's not going to accept this quietly. He'll investigate. He'll dig into your past, my past, looking for anything that doesn't line up." She met his eyes. "If there's anything in your history, anything at all that could be used against us, I need to know now." "Like what?" "I don't know. Debts, legal issues, relationships that ended badly. Anything that could be twisted into a narrative that makes this marriage look fake." Ethan thought about his life, his modest income, his mountain of medical debt from Sarah's treatment, his quiet existence raising Lily, There wasn't much to find. "There's nothing," he said. "I'm boring, Clara. That's kind of the point." "No one's that boring." "I am." Ethan shrugged. "I work, I take care of my daughter, I pay my bills. The most exciting thing that's happened to me in 3 years is this fake marriage." Clara almost smiled. "All right, then we should be fine." "Should be?" "Victor's resourceful. He'll find something, even if he has to manufacture it." She started up the stairs, then paused. "Get some sleep. Monday's going to be chaos at the office." Ethan watched her go, then headed to his own room. He changed out of the tuxedo, hanging it carefully in the closet. The evening felt surreal in retrospect. Had he really just attended a high society gala? Kissed his fake wife in front of hundreds of people? Lied to an entire ballroom? He checked on Lily, sleeping peacefully, her book still open on her chest. Ethan moved it to the nightstand and pulled the blanket over her shoulders. She stirred slightly but didn't wake. His phone buzzed. A text from Clara. "You did great tonight, really. Thank you." Ethan typed back. "You too. We make a good team. Let's hope it's enough." He stared at that last message for a long time before turning off his phone. The weekend passed quietly. Clara worked from her home office while Ethan helped Lily with homework and tried to process everything that had happened. On Sunday, they had breakfast together, Clara's second attempt at pancakes, which were marginally better than the first. "They're still kind of dry," Lily observed. "I'm aware," Clara said dryly. "Cooking is not my strong suit." "What is your strong suit?" Lily asked. "Running a company, making difficult decisions, scaring board members." Clara paused. "Though I'm starting to think those aren't actually valuable life skills." "They sound pretty valuable to me," Ethan said. "They don't help me make pancakes." Lily laughed, and something in Clara's face softened. She was trying, Ethan realized, really trying to fit into their small family unit, even temporarily. Monday arrived with a vengeance. Ethan returned to work expecting awkwardness, but he wasn't prepared for the reality. Everyone knew. The gala photos were all over social media. Clara in her blue gown, Ethan in his tuxedo, the kiss that had sealed their performance. His coworkers didn't know how to act around him anymore. He wasn't just Ethan from operations. He was the CEO's husband. People who'd never given him a second glance now wanted to be his friend. Meetings he'd never been invited to suddenly had room for him. It was deeply uncomfortable. At lunch, he escaped to a quiet corner of the cafeteria. His phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello? Mr. Cole, this is Rachel Torres from the New York Tribune." The woman's voice was all business. "I'm writing a piece about you and Ms. West. I was hoping you'd answer a few questions." Ethan's blood went cold. "I don't think... Just a few quick questions about how you met, your relationship timeline. Our readers are very interested in Palmer Industries' new power couple." "I'm not interested in being interviewed. Thank you." He hung up. The phone rang again immediately, different number. "Mr. Cole, this is James Chen from Business Weekly." Ethan hung up again. And again. By the time he made it back to his desk, he'd received 7 calls from various media outlets. Clara had warned him this would happen, but knowing it intellectually was different from experiencing it. He texted her. "The press is calling. What do I do?" Her response was immediate. "Don't answer. Refer them to our PR department. I'll handle it." But handling it proved harder than expected. Over the next few days, articles appeared. Speculation about their relationship. Questions about the timing. One particularly aggressive blogger suggested the marriage was a business arrangement to satisfy trust requirements. They were closer to the truth than they knew. On Wednesday evening, Ethan came home to find Clara in the kitchen, laptop open, reading something that made her expression darken. "What's wrong?" he asked. She turned the screen toward him. It was an article titled "The Convenient Marriage, Clara West's Strategic Move." Ethan skimmed it. The author questioned everything. The sudden marriage, Ethan's background, the timing, relative to Palmer Industries' fiscal calendar. They'd done their homework, pulling up old photos, interviewing former colleagues, building a case that this wasn't what it seemed. "This is bad," Ethan said. "It gets worse." Clara pulled up another article. This one included interviews with anonymous Palmer Industries employees questioning whether Ethan and Clara had ever actually dated. "Victor's behind this. He has to be." Can he prove anything? Not yet. But he's building doubt, making people question us. And if enough doubt exists, the board could call for an investigation. Into what? Into whether our marriage is legitimate, whether I satisfied the trust requirements in good faith. Clara's hands were shaking slightly. If they determine I married you fraudulently, the trust terms are void. Victor gets exactly what he wanted. Ethan felt panic rising in his chest. What do we do? We need to be more convincing, more public, more... She trailed off, struggling for the word. More real, Ethan finished. Yes, we need to look like an actual married couple, not two people who signed papers and called it a day. Clara was right, of course, but Ethan wasn't sure how to fake something that was supposed to feel genuine. They were already performing. How much more could they give? I have an idea, Clara said slowly, but you're not going to like it. What? There's a Palmer Industries retreat next weekend, executive leadership and their spouses. 3 days at a resort upstate. Team building, strategic planning, all the usual corporate nonsense. Okay? Spouses attend everything. Dinners, activities, the works. We'd be together constantly, in front of everyone. Clara met his eyes. It would be the perfect opportunity to show we're actually a couple, but it also means 3 days of non-stop performance. Ethan thought about it. 3 days of pretending. 3 days of being watched and judged. 3 days away from Lily. What about my daughter? Mrs. Yates can stay with her. I'll pay triple her usual rate. Lily's not going to be happy about this. I know, but Ethan, we don't have a choice. The articles are multiplying. The speculation is growing. If we don't push back hard, Victor's going to win. She was right. Ethan hated it, but she was right. Okay, he said. We'll go. Relief crossed Clara's face. Thank you. But we need to prepare. If we're going to spend 3 days convincing your executives we're in love, we need to actually know each other, really know each other. What do you suggest? Tell me everything. Your childhood, your fears, your dreams, everything that made you who you are, and I'll do the same. Because if someone asks me about my wife's favorite childhood memory or her biggest regret, I need to have an answer. Clara nodded slowly. You're right. When should we start? Now. They moved to the living room, settling on opposite ends of the couch. And for the next 3 hours, they talked. Really talked. Clara told him about growing up in her grandfather's shadow, always trying to prove she was good enough. About the pressure to be perfect, to never show weakness, to earn love through achievement. Ethan told her about Sarah, about the early years when they'd been happy before cancer stole that away. About learning to be a single parent, about the nights he'd cried after putting Lily to bed because he didn't know if he could do this alone. They shared fears and dreams and the small, vulnerable truths people usually kept hidden. And somewhere in those hours, something shifted. The performance became less of a performance. The stranger across from him became a person he actually knew. By the time they finished, it was past midnight. Clara looked exhausted but lighter somehow. Thank you for sharing all that, she said quietly. Thank you for listening. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Clara said, I should probably tell you, the retreat includes couples activities, trust exercises, that kind of thing. Ethan groaned. Of course it does. One of them is a marriage quiz. They ask both partners questions separately, then see how many answers match. Wonderful. At least now we have a chance of passing it. Clara stood, stretching. I'm going to bed. Big day tomorrow. Clara? She turned. We're going to be okay. We'll get through this. A genuine smile crossed her face. You keep saying that. I'm starting to believe you. After she left, Ethan sat alone in the quiet house. Through the window, he could see the city lights in the distance. Somewhere out there, Victor Hale was plotting his next move. Somewhere, reporters were writing articles questioning their marriage. Somewhere, the truth was waiting to destroy everything. But in this moment, Ethan felt something he hadn't expected. Hope. The resort sat nestled in the Catskills, all rustic elegance and manufactured charm. Log cabins dotted the hillside, connected by stone pathways that wound through pine trees. A main lodge dominated the property, massive timber beams, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a lake that reflected the autumn sky like polished glass. Ethan and Clara arrived Friday afternoon in a company car, their overnight bags in the trunk containing enough clothes for 3 days of performance. The other executives were already there, gathered on the lodge's deck with cocktails and forced camaraderie. "Remember," Clara murmured as they approached, "we're newlyweds. Happy. Can't keep our hands off each other." That might be overselling it. Trust me, these people need to see affection, real affection. She laced her fingers through his. The gesture was becoming familiar now, almost comfortable. Ethan squeezed back. They were greeted immediately by Richard Palmer, Clara's second-in-command. "Clara! Ethan! Welcome, welcome!" He clapped Ethan on the shoulder with enthusiasm that felt genuine. "Glad you could make it. We've got quite the weekend planned." "So I've heard," Ethan said. "Team building at its finest. Tomorrow morning, we've got trust exercises. Afternoon is the marriage quiz, which you two should ace, being so newly in love. And tomorrow night is the formal dinner." Richard winked. "Sunday's more relaxed, kayaking, hiking, that sort of thing." The marriage quiz. Clara had warned him, but hearing it confirmed made Ethan's stomach tighten. They were shown to their cabin, a cozy structure with a king-sized bed, stone fireplace, and a bathroom with a clawfoot tub. Very romantic. Very much designed for actual couples. Ethan set down his bag and stared at the bed. One bed. "I can sleep on the floor," he offered. Clara raised an eyebrow. "Don't be ridiculous. We're adults. We can share a bed without it being weird." "Can we?" "We'll have to. If housekeeping comes in and sees pillows on the floor, it'll raise questions." She started unpacking. "Besides, I don't bite." "That's reassuring." "Unless you want me to," Clara added with a slight smirk. Ethan blinked. Was she flirting? "Are you making a joke?" "Trying to." "Is it working?" "I'm not sure yet." They settled in, changing into more casual clothes for the evening's welcome reception. As Ethan emerged from the bathroom, he found Clara standing by the window, her shoulders tense. "You okay?" he asked. "Just thinking about tomorrow, the quiz." She turned to face him. "What if we don't match? What if we fumble basic questions and everyone sees through us?" "Then we laugh it off, blame it on being newlyweds, still learning each other." "Victor will be watching, looking for any crack." "Victor's always watching." Ethan crossed to her, surprising himself by placing his hands on her shoulders. "But we've prepared. We know each other now. Maybe not everything, but enough." Clara leaned into his touch slightly. "When did you become the optimistic one?" "Someone has to be." The reception was exactly what Ethan expected. Executives trying to relax while still performing their corporate personas, spouses making polite small talk, an open bar doing most of the heavy lifting. He and Clara worked the room together, her hand rarely leaving his arm. Ethan met CFOs and COOs, VPs of departments he'd never heard of, people whose salaries probably exceeded his lifetime earnings. They all wanted to know about the whirlwind romance, the surprise wedding, how Clara had changed since meeting him. "She smiles more," Ethan found himself saying to one particularly nosy executive's wife. "Before, she was all business. Now she remembers to enjoy life." It wasn't entirely false. Clara did seem lighter lately. Whether that was because of him or just relief that the trust deadline had passed, Ethan wasn't sure. Dinner was served buffet style, upscale comfort food that everyone pretended was just okay even though it was excellent. Ethan sat beside Clara at a long table, her thigh pressed against his in the crowded seating. Every so often, she'd lean over and whisper commentary about whoever was speaking, and Ethan would have to suppress a laugh. "See the woman in the purple dress? That's Helen Chen, head of marketing. She once fired an entire team because they used the wrong font in a presentation." "You're making that up." "I absolutely am not. She has very strong feelings about fonts." This version of Clara, playful, conspiratorial, was new, and Ethan found he liked it. After dinner, people drifted into smaller groups. Some went to the bar, others started a bonfire by the lake. Clara tugged Ethan toward the fire, where they found seats on a log bench. The flames cast dancing shadows across her face. She'd let her hair down, and it fell in dark waves over her shoulders. In the firelight, wearing jeans and a simple sweater, she looked less like a CEO and more like someone Ethan might have actually fallen for under normal circumstances. That thought unsettled him more than it should have. "Penny for your thoughts," Clara said softly. "Just thinking about how strange this all is. A month ago, I didn't know you. Now we're sitting at a corporate retreat pretending to be in love." "Pretending," Clara repeated, something unreadable in her voice. "Isn't that what we're doing?" Before she could answer, Richard Palmer appeared with a guitar. "Anyone want to hear some music? Fair warning, I'm terrible." He was, in fact, terrible. But the awfulness was charming, and soon people were singing along to mangled versions of classic rock songs. Clara surprised Ethan by knowing all the words to Don't Stop Believin'. "Secret Journey fan?" he teased. "My grandfather loved them, used to play their albums constantly." Her smile was wistful. "I haven't thought about that in years." "What else did he love?" "Baseball, the Yankees specifically, Sunday dinners, old movies. He had this whole collection of films from the 40s and 50s. Clara stared into the fire. "He taught me everything about running a business, but he also taught me to appreciate old things, beautiful things that last. He sounds like a good man." He was. Complicated, traditional in ways that hurt sometimes, but good. She looked at Ethan. "I think he would have liked you." "Yeah?" "You remind me of him, actually. Steady, principled, the kind of person who does what's right even when it's hard." Ethan felt his chest tighten. "I'm not sure I deserve that comparison. You married a stranger to protect 1,200 jobs. I'd say that's pretty principled. I also did it for $5 million. "True," Clara smiled, "but you could have walked away. You didn't." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the fire burn down to embers. Eventually, people began drifting back to their cabins. Clara and Ethan walked slowly along the stone path, the night air cool against their skin. Inside their cabin, the reality of sharing a bed became unavoidable. They took turns in the bathroom, brushing teeth and changing into sleepwear. Ethan emerged in a t-shirt and pajama pants to find Clara already under the covers, reading something on her phone. "Which side do you want?" she asked. "I'm fine with either." Diplomatic answer. She patted the right side. "This one's closer to the bathroom. You'll probably need it more than me. Thanks for that vote of confidence in my bladder control." Clara actually laughed. Ethan climbed into bed, careful to stay on his side. The mattress was comfortable, the sheets high thread count luxury. He could smell Clara's shampoo, something floral he'd started to associate with her. "Good night, Ethan," she said, turning off the bedside lamp. "Good night." Darkness settled over the cabin. Yeah. Outside, wind rustled through pine trees. Ethan lay very still, hyper-aware of Clara's presence beside him. He could hear her breathing, feel the slight dip in the mattress. "Can I ask you something?" Clara's voice came through the darkness. "Sure." "Do you ever regret it, saying yes to this?" Ethan considered the question. Did he regret it? His life had been turned upside down. His daughter was upset. He was lying to everyone he knew. But there was also Lily's trust fund, their financial security, and something else he couldn't quite name. "Ask me again in 6 months," he said finally. "Fair enough." More silence. Then Clara said very quietly, "Thank you for being here, for doing this. I know it's not easy." "You've said that before." "I mean it every time." Ethan rolled onto his side, facing where he knew she was in the darkness. "Can I ask you something now?" "Okay." "What happens after? When the 6 months are up and we divorce, what happens to you?" "I keep running the company. The trust terms only require marriage at the time of my 36th birthday. Once that's satisfied, my marital status doesn't matter anymore." "So you'll be free?" "Yes." A pause. "We both will be." The words should have been reassuring. Instead, they left Ethan feeling oddly hollow. He must have eventually slept because he woke to sunlight streaming through the windows and Clara already up, dressed in athletic wear, stretching by the fireplace. "Morning," she said. "Trust exercises start in an hour. I ordered coffee and pastries. They should be here soon." Ethan sat up, running a hand through his hair. "You're chipper." "I went for a run. Helps me think." "And what did you think about?" "Today, the quiz. How to make sure we pass." She sat on the edge of the bed. "I've been going over our conversations, the things we shared, I think we're ready. You think? I hope. She smiled. That's the best I can offer. The trust exercises were exactly as terrible as Ethan feared. Executives and their spouses paired up for activities designed to test communication and cooperation. There was a blindfolded obstacle course where one partner had to guide the other using only verbal instructions, a puzzle that required both people working together, a ridiculous activity involving balancing on planks while answering questions about your relationship. Claire and Ethan fumbled through most of it, but so did everyone else. The point wasn't perfection. The point was showing you could work together, laugh at mistakes, support each other. During lunch, Richard Palmer pulled Ethan aside. You two are good together. Natural. Thanks, Ethan said carefully. I'll be honest, when Clara first announced she was married, I was skeptical. Thought maybe it was impulsive, a mistake. Richard smiled. But seeing you this weekend, the way you look at each other, the way you communicate without even speaking, it's clear you care about each other. Guilt twisted in Ethan's gut. We're still figuring things out. That's what marriage is. Constant figuring out. Richard clapped him on the back. You're good for her, Ethan. She's more relaxed, more human. Hold on to that. The marriage quiz took place after lunch in the main lodge. Couples sat at separate tables while a moderator asked questions. Each partner wrote their answer on a small whiteboard. Then they'd reveal simultaneously to see if they matched. Ethan's palms were sweating. The first questions were easy. Favorite color, favorite food, where they met. Clara had drilled him on these, and they matched perfectly. Then the questions got harder. What was your spouse's childhood dream job? The moderator asked. Ethan thought back to their late-night conversation. Clara had mentioned this. What was it? Marine biologist. No, that wasn't right. Archaeologist. She'd wanted to be an archaeologist, to dig up ancient civilizations. He wrote it down, held his breath. Clara revealed her board. Archaeologist. Ethan showed his. Archaeologist. Relief flooded through him. They matched. The questions continued. Biggest fear. Most embarrassing moment. First concert. Pet peeve. Ethan drew on everything Clara had told him, everything he'd learned over late-night talks and quiet moments. Most couples got 5 or 6 matches out of 10. Ethan and Clara got 9. Newlyweds, the moderator said with a knowing smile. Still in that phase where you talk all night and learn everything about each other. Enjoy it while it lasts. People laughed. Clara's hand found Ethan's under the table, squeezing tight. They'd done it. They'd passed. That evening's formal dinner was a celebration of the successful retreat. People were relaxed now, the corporate mask slipping. Wine flowed freely. Conversations grew louder, more genuine. Ethan found himself actually enjoying it. He'd gotten to know some of the other spouses, normal people who'd married into this world of wealth and power and were still trying to figure out how they fit. After dinner, there was dancing. A DJ played a mix of decades, from swing to modern pop. Clara pulled Ethan onto the dance floor. I should warn you, he said, I'm a terrible dancer. Lucky for you, so am I. They swayed together, not quite in rhythm with the music. Clara's hand rested on his shoulder, his on her waist. They were close enough that Ethan could count the flecks of gold in her brown eyes. We did it, Clara said softly. We convinced them. Yeah, we did. Thank you. For the quiz, for this weekend, for everything. You keep thanking me. Because I keep meaning it. She looked up at him, something shifting in her expression. Ethan, I need to tell you something. His heart kicked. What? Before she could answer, someone tapped Clara's shoulder. Victor Hale stood behind them, his smile not reaching his eyes. Mind if I cut in? He asked. Every instinct told Ethan to say no. But refusing would look suspicious, territorial in a way that might seem desperate. Clara's eyes asked the question. Ethan nodded reluctantly. She stepped into Victor's arms and Ethan moved to the edge of the dance floor, watching. Victor said something that made Clara's spine stiffen. She responded, her face carefully neutral. They danced for what felt like hours, but was probably only 2 minutes. When the song ended, Clara immediately returned to Ethan's side. What did he say? Ethan asked. That he knows. About us. About the arrangement. Claire's voice was barely above a whisper. He can't prove it, but he knows. How? He's been digging, found discrepancies in our timeline, people who never saw us together before the wedding, inconsistencies he's building into a case. She gripped Ethan's arm. He's planning to present it to the board, force an investigation. Ethan's world tilted. When? Monday, emergency board meeting. Clara looked genuinely afraid for the first time since Ethan had known her. If they vote to investigate, if they find proof we married fraudulently, I lose everything. The company, my reputation, all of it. What proof does he have? I don't know, but Victor doesn't bluff. She pulled him toward the exit. We need to talk, somewhere private. They walked to their cabin in tense silence. Inside, Clara paced while Ethan tried to process what was happening. There has to be something we can do, he said. Like what? We can't prove we're in love. We can't show years of history that doesn't exist. Clara's voice broke. Victor's going to win. After everything, he's going to win. No. Ethan caught her mid-pace, his hands on her shoulders. We don't give up. Not yet. Ethan, listen to me. Victor has suspicions. That's all. He doesn't have proof because there isn't any proof. We're legally married. We live together. We know each other. Those are facts. Facts arranged for convenience, but facts nonetheless. Ethan's mind was racing. What if we give the board something Victor can't explain away? Something that proves we're not faking this? Like what? Ethan didn't let himself think too hard about what he was about to suggest. What if we didn't get divorced? Clara went very still. What? You said the trust only requires you to be married at 36. It doesn't specify how long the marriage has to last afterward. So what if we stayed married? Not for 6 months, for real. Ethan, that's crazy. Is it? Think about it. Victor's whole case is that we married for convenience and plan to divorce once the trust clears. If we're still married a year from now, 2 years, his argument falls apart. You can't possibly want to stay married to me, Clara said. Why not? Because you barely know me. Because this was supposed to be temporary. Because you deserve better than a marriage of convenience that never ends. What if it's not convenient anymore? The words came out before Ethan could stop them. What if somewhere in the past month this stopped being entirely fake? Clara stared at him. What are you saying? I'm saying that I like you, Clara. Really like you. I like the way you try to make pancakes even though you're terrible at it. I like how you remember everything Lily tells you. I like that you're brilliant and driven, but also kind. I like coming home to you. Ethan, I'm not saying I'm in love with you. We haven't had enough time for that. But I could be. I think I could be. He took a breath. So what if we gave this a real chance? No timeline, no contract, just two people seeing where this goes. Tears were streaming down Clara's face. You don't mean that. You're just trying to save me. I'm trying to save us both. Ethan wiped her tears with his thumb. Because I think you feel it too. This thing between us that's more than just performance. I do, Clara whispered. I feel it, and it terrifies me. Why? Because what if you change your mind? What if 6 months from now you realize this was all a mistake and you resent me for trapping you? You're not trapping me. I'm choosing this. Right now, I'm choosing you. Clara looked at him for a long moment. Then, slowly, she reached up and pulled his face down to hers. The kiss was nothing like the one at the gala or the courthouse. This wasn't for cameras or witnesses. This was real, desperate and honest and full of everything they'd been holding back. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Clara said, If we do this, I need to know you're sure, that this isn't just strategy. I'm sure. And Lily? Have you thought about what this means for her? Lily asked me if I was going to fall in love with you. I think part of her was hoping I would. She likes you, Clara. She just didn't want to admit it. I like her too. She's extraordinary. She gets that from her mother. Clara smiled through her tears. So we're really doing this? Staying married? We're doing this. They kissed again, slower this time. And when they finally pulled apart, Ethan felt something settle in his chest. This was right. Insane and unexpected, but right. Sunday morning, they woke tangled together, Ethan's arm around Clara's waist, her head on his chest. It felt natural, like they'd been sleeping this way for years. Clara stirred first. Hi. Hi. Did last night actually happen, or did I dream it? It happened. She smiled, then sobered. We still have to face the board tomorrow. Victor's still going to call for an investigation. Let him. We'll tell them the truth. Which truth? That we married quickly, that there were practical reasons involved, but that somewhere along the way, we fell for each other. Ethan kissed her forehead. It's not a lie anymore. The drive back to the city felt different. Clara sat closer, her hand in his. They talked about the future, not the performance, but the actual future. What staying married would look like. How to tell Lily. What it meant for them both. When they arrived home, Lily was waiting in the living room with Mrs. Yates. She took one look at them and her eyes widened. Something's different, she said. What do you mean? Ethan asked. You're different. You're standing closer. Lily's eyes narrowed. Did something happen? Ethan glanced at Clara, who nodded encouragingly. Can we talk? He asked Lily. Just the two of us? They went to the kitchen while Clara tactfully gave them space. Ethan sat across from his daughter, searching for the right words. Remember when you asked if I was going to fall in love with Clara? Lily's expression became guarded. Yeah. I told you no, that this was just a job. Ethan took a breath. I was wrong. You fell in love with her, Lily said flatly. I'm falling. I don't know if it's love yet, but it's something real, something that matters. He reached for her hand. And I need to know how you feel about that. Lily was quiet for a long moment. Then, is she going to leave? What? Mom left. Not on purpose, but she left. And I know this was supposed to be temporary with Clara. So is she going to leave too? Ethan's heart broke. No, sweetheart. She's not leaving. We're staying married, for real this time. You promise? I promise. And if Clara's okay with it, I'd like us to be a family, the three of us. Lily looked toward the living room where Clara waited. She makes you happy. She does. And she's nice to me, even when she doesn't have to be. She really likes you, Lil. Can I ask her something? Of course. Lily went to the living room. Ethan followed, finding Clara standing by the window looking nervous. Clara? Lily said. Yes? Are you going to stay? Like, actually stay? Clara knelt down to Lily's level. If you'll let me, yes. I know this started strangely, but your dad and I, we've become real. And I'd like to try being part of your family. If that's okay with you. Lily studied her for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, she hugged Clara. Okay, Lily whispered. You can stay. Clara's arms came around her, tears streaming down her face again. Ethan watched them, his throat tight with emotion. This was what he'd been missing, what they'd all been missing. Monday's board meeting was everything Clara had feared and nothing like she expected. Victor presented his case, the timeline inconsistencies, the lack of prior relationship evidence, the convenient timing. But then Clara presented her defense. Victor's right, she said calmly. Ethan and I married quickly. There were practical considerations, but what Victor doesn't understand is that sometimes practical decisions lead to real feelings. She pulled up photos on the screen, the gala, the retreat, moments captured by corporate photographers that showed two people genuinely connecting. I'm not going to stand here and pretend this was a traditional romance. It wasn't. But it's real. Ethan and I are building something together, and whether Victor approves or not, whether any of you approve, doesn't change the facts. I satisfied the trust requirements legally and in good faith, and I intend to remain married to my husband. Richard Palmer spoke up. I was at the retreat. I saw them together. They're not faking this. Other board members nodded. Even those allied with Victor seemed unconvinced by his accusations. Victor tried to push back, but he had nothing concrete. No proof of fraud. No evidence of deception. Just suspicion and circumstantial observations. The vote wasn't even close. The board declined to investigate. Clara's marriage stood. Victor's play had failed. After the meeting, Clara found Ethan waiting in her office. How did it go? He asked. We won. She collapsed into his arms. It's over. Victor has nothing. So we're safe. We're safe. They stood like that for a long moment, just holding each other. Then Clara pulled back, smiling. I have something for you, she said. She pulled out the ring they'd bought for appearances, the simple gold band that had started all of this. Except it wasn't the same ring. This one had an inscription inside. Read it, Clara said. Ethan tilted it to the light. The inscription read, The best things in life usually surprise us. It's what I said at the gala, Clara explained, about our relationship. I meant it then, even though I didn't know it yet. And I mean it now. Ethan slid the ring onto his finger, replacing the original. I have something for you too. He pulled out a small box. Inside was a delicate necklace with a pendant shaped like an open book. You said Pride and Prejudice was your favorite, Ethan said. The book that taught you not to settle for anything less than love. I wanted you to have a reminder that you didn't settle, that this is real. Clara put it on, her hands shaking. It's perfect. So are you. They kissed in her office, the city sprawling below them through the windows. And for the first time since this crazy arrangement began, Ethan felt like everything had fallen into place. 6 months later, they renewed their vows. A real ceremony this time, with Lily as flower girl, and tears and laughter and promises they actually meant. The courthouse wedding had been necessary. This one was chosen. A year after that, Clara stepped down as CEO. Not because she had to, but because she wanted to spend more time with her family. She stayed on the board, consulting and guiding, but the 70-hour weeks were done. Ethan took a position in strategic planning, a role that challenged him intellectually without consuming his life. They found balance. They built a life together. And on their 5th anniversary, sitting by the lake at the resort where everything had changed, Clara asked, Do you ever regret it? Saying yes that night? Ethan thought about everything that had happened. The fear, the performance, the moment it all became real. Not for a second, he said. Even the terrible parts? Especially the terrible parts. They led us here. Clara leaned against him, watching the sunset paint the water gold. I asked a stranger to marry me to save my company. And I said yes to protect 1,200 jobs. And we ended up saving each other. Yeah, Ethan said, kissing the top of her head. We did. Lily appeared on the dock, now 16 and impossibly grown up. Mom, Dad, dinner's ready. Mom. She'd started calling Clara that a year ago, the first time they'd both cried. They walked back to the cabin together, a real family now, not a performance. Ethan's hand found Clara's, and she squeezed back. What started as a desperate arrangement had become the best decision either of them had ever made. Not because it was logical or planned, but because sometimes the biggest risks lead to the most unexpected rewards. And sometimes the best marriages begin with the strangest proposals.